I recall the first press conference of the Law Enforcement Council, some of you may remember, was held 6.5 years ago in much cooler weather. In December 1982, the mayor was present that day, District Attorney Morgenthau was present, and we began work with state government, with the new governor. And in those 6.5 years, I must say, we have had a tremendous amount of support from the top levels of state government. We worked with the Director of Criminal Justice, who was then Larry Kurlander, is now John Poklemba, and the law enforcement community has been much, much encouraged by the brilliant leadership that we have gotten from the governor of the state of New York, Mario Cuomo.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Tom. The program and the details of what it was that we wanted to talk to you about today have already been so brilliantly described and elaborated that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them. I'm grateful to Frank Looney and to Ben Ward, to Bob Morgenthau, and to the mayor for describing the situation to you. What I would like to do is to try to give you a little perspective and maybe in the process give myself a little perspective, because all of these people here, including my own Director of Criminal Justice, John Poklemba, are experts and are absolutely steeped in this subject of law enforcement and crime. And sometimes I think we get so sophisticated about it that the big picture escapes us. And the big picture here is almost surrealistic. If you step back and see it the way my mother sees it out in Queens, you see what's going on. Number one, everybody knows we are at war, and while politicians have used that language carelessly in the past, you use it accurately now. Not since the Civil War have you lost so many of your people in a struggle on your own streets in your own land. We're losing lives every day. That's not an exaggeration. We are being beset by a new form of drugs called crack that was not thought of 3 years ago, that has no response, that is frightening in its implications and not even thoroughly understood. It can addict you in one try. It's so inexpensive that a child can purchase it with the money that he or she steals from his or her mother's purse. Nobody ever thought of this problem before. We have 12-year-old addicts and 13-year-olds on the top of roofs with sophisticated electronic equipment warning 14-year-old peddlers that the police are on the way. Nobody ever dreamt of anything like what we have. The police were never prepared for this kind of assault. Police are being shot at, police are being killed, police are being swamped by drug dealers, so many that the whole population turns to the police and says, I see them every day selling this stuff, why aren't you locking them up? The police arrest them over and over, and because the whole system is inundated, it may be a dozen arrests before you get anybody tried. If you can find a DA, because they're all overworked, and then the legal aid that's supposed to be providing the defense, they're understaffed. And if you finally get somebody tried and convicted, then the prisons were overcrowded. We're going broke building prisons. We did it again last night, another bill. We're going to give you 6,000 more beds. That's $110,000 a bed. $30,000 each to maintain. Hundreds of millions of dollars at the same time that I was pleading, and so was the whole legislature, poverty from one end of the state to another, being beaten up by everybody because we couldn't give them enough money for the good things, for prenatal, for teenage pregnancy, for education, for the city university, for the state university. You're at war and you're losing. And everybody knows it. We admit that. Nobody in this room would dispute it. No liberal, no conservative, no realistic person, whether they vote or don't vote, whether they're advocates or just victims. Everybody knows we're at war. Certainly the legislature must. It's not just New York, it's true of the whole country, but we're concerned about our city and our state. Okay, that's number one, you're at war. And you have a lot of legislators who are talking very, very tough. Nobody knows it better than I, because I've listened to them for 7 years as governor, and for 8 years before then, when Hugh Carey was governor and I was Secretary of State and then Lieutenant Governor. And I've had them for the last 7 years tell me, we're tough, we want to kill people with the death penalty. And I have said to them, I don't accept it, I don't agree with it, I think you're phonies on this issue, some of you. I don't think it's going to make the police safer. And anyway, while you're talking about the death penalty, you had better do a whole lot of other things. You had better educate people, you had better provide treatment, you had better provide police and DAs, etc. Now, that's been the argument for 7 years. And what's happened? It's worse than ever right now. The police are victimized the way they never have been before. The whole system is absolutely overcome. That's all accepted. That's all agreed to. And taking that context, here's what we have done. We've gone up to Albany, to the legislature, and we have said, here, you want the death penalty? Most people in this state want the death penalty. I understand that. People brighter than I want the death penalty. I accept that. People better than I want the death penalty, and I accept that. I disagree with them. Let's argue out the death penalty. I will argue against it, you argue for it. But for God's sake, whether you get it or not, be fair to the truth. You know that the death penalty at the very best will not solve our problems. Even if it's everything you say that it is. Even if I'm 100% wrong on it, it's not going to solve all our problems. You'll still need more police. You'll still need more courts. You'll still need more judges. You'll still need more laws. You'll still need more prisons. Is that not correct? And the people who tell you the truth, or who silently contain it within themselves, recognize it. The answer is, of course that's correct, Mario. Of course we need to do much more. And so we laid it out for them with all these experts led by Tom Reppetto and all the other people here. We told them, okay, death penalty, if you get it, you get it. A tragedy, in my opinion, but you get it. If you don't get it, why not do life in prison without parole? What's your argument against it? At the very least, it's stronger than what you now have. If you say you need a penalty as tough as the death penalty, why not life in prison without parole? Nobody's ever responded to it. Nobody's ever given a good reason not to do it. Well then, why don't they do it? My guess, because they're afraid it will deny them the full force of the death penalty issue. Because maybe if you give the people of this state life in prison without parole, they won't want the death penalty. But if the people don't want it, what's your problem? If they get life in prison without parole and like it and say that's enough, then what are you complaining about? So that can't be a valid excuse. Forget the death penalty. Forget life in prison without parole. How can you tell the people of this state that you're leaving on Friday, June 30th? Why? There's a constitutional limit? No, no, no. There's a statute that says you must leave. No, 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 no. The only train from Albany dies after Friday. No, no. They're going to erect a wall around the city and your family won't be let in. No. Well, then why must you leave on Friday? Because we said we were leaving on Friday. Well, give me another. No, we said it, and we said we told everybody it was going to be Friday. Okay, I'm for it, you're leaving on Friday. Nobody in this world is more eager to see them leave on Friday. Okay? But before you leave, don't you have to do this important work? How can you tell the people of the city of New York and the state that you're tough on crime if you leave the assault weapons in the hands of people who are killing police? Now this one I do not understand. The very same people who are saying to you, we're tougher than Cuomo, we want the death penalty, they have the police absolutely convinced that they're with them, and the police are absolutely with these legislative leaders who want the death penalty. Make no mistake about it. I mean, I know, I can see it in their looks when I walk down the street. They want the death penalty. Okay. And these leaders are telling them, we're with you, we're going to protect you. These same police, every one of them, plus their brothers and sisters who don't agree with them on the death penalty, are also up in Albany, figuratively, on their knees, pleading, take these assault weapons out of the hands of people who would kill us with them. If you want to protect us, do the most obvious thing that we all agree to. Take these, what Ben Ward called machine guns, out of the hands of killers. Make them illegal. How could you not? What reason is there not to make them illegal? The sportsmen, incidentally, by my bill, are not deprived of any legal use of semi-automatic weapons that they now have. Did you know that? That they can hunt right now with semi-automatic rifles. You keep 3 guns and 3 bullets in the chamber, and 1 in the chamber and 3 in the magazine. That's legal. That continues to be legal. Nothing is done to reduce the sportsman's right to hunt. Did you hear me? Nothing. Well, then what's their argument? They wrote a lot of letters, the legislators said. The NRA says, we don't want any rules against guns. You can use missiles. We don't want any rules against guns. We want machetes to hack at insects, and we want machine guns to shoot birds in the trees. And these people are saying, oh, we'll give you the death penalty because we're tough. We'll stand with you. But we can't take on the gun lobby, Madam Police Person, Mr. Police Person. We can't do it. We're with you. We're tough. Cuomo's soft. But when it comes to assault weapons, tougher than us is the gun lobby. Tougher than you policemen is the gun lobby. Smarter than all the experts is the gun lobby. Think of it. Think of it. They're going to leave on June 30th telling you how tough they are, and they're going to leave the weapons in the hands of the criminals. They're going to leave the schools without drug education. They're going to leave the assets in the hands of the criminals. I went down to Sheriff Navarro in Florida and Bob Martinez. I saw BMWs, airplanes, Porsches that he seized, that he then converts into cash for money for the law enforcement people. Why can't you do that up here? Well, because they have to leave June 30th. Why? Because they're going to build a wall around Albany and the relatives aren't going to be allowed in. I mean, it's incredible. Think about it. They're going to allow the present law that we think should be made tougher with respect to sales of drugs within 1,500 feet of a school. Here's another one. Chief Judge Sal Wakla has been pleading for 13 new judges. I've made an agreement with the Chief Judge. I said, I'll do it. The money's in the budget. I said it last year. I said it again this year. You need 13 new judges so that when we put new police on the street, they make more arrests. We get them prosecuted because we're going to have to get more money to DAs to beef them up. You need judges to hear those cases. We've just given you the prisons last night to put them in, but you need those judges. They're not going to do the judges. Why not? Well, here, they're really in difficulty trying to explain. They're not happy politically. But what do you mean they're not happy politically? Well, here's the way it works now. Under the Constitution. I didn't write the Constitution. I like the Constitution as it's written, incidentally, but I didn't write it. The Constitution says the governor names the judges to the Court of Claims, and then the Senate confirms them. If they don't like them, they don't confirm them, you have no judges. What the legislators want is, Mario, we want to pick them. You want to pick them, then you run against me, you beat me for governor, you become the governor, and then you pick them. But until, that changes, or the Constitution changes, I have to pick them. Well, then we won't give you the judges. It's not me you're denying. It's 18 million people who you said are in such tough shape that you have to go back to electrocution. I mean, you're the one who said it's so desperate that you have to give up a penalty. You have to go back to a penalty we gave up years ago saying it wouldn't work. You're the ones who are saying that things are so bad here that you've got to go back to a system that puts you with South Africa and the Soviet Union as the only two industrialized nations that kill the way we do. And if you want to get down into the non-industrial, you're talking about Iran and now China. You're the one who says it's so bad we have to do that. Okay, it is bad. Why don't you do the judges? Why don't you do the assault weapons? Why don't you do the education in schools? Why don't you do the immunity? Why don't you do the forfeiture? I haven't heard any answers, and I'll be talking to them again at 4 o'clock today. I tell you, if you take the big picture here, it is nearly inexplicable. I mean, how do you explain it to practical people? How do you explain it to ordinary, honest, common sense people who say, Governor, will you tell us what's going on in Albany? Say, well, everybody knows we're at war. Everybody knows we're getting killed. But they can't agree on taking the weapons out of the hands of the enemy. They can't agree on using the stuff that they stole from us to fight them back. They can't agree on locking them up in prison camps forever so that they don't go back on the streets, seize a weapon, and shoot at us again. Yes, we're in the middle of the war. The president knows it. The Democrats know it. The Republicans know it. The people know it better than anybody. But we can't agree on what to do, so we're going to leave on June 30th and let the war continue. It's unthinkable. We'll do everything we can to see that doesn't happen. Thank you.
May I just call to your attention, there are a number of community groups here that have come in on short notice to show their support for law enforcement. They're from all of the boroughs. The governor has said, and the other speakers will take questions now from press representatives. So, Governor, if you would just...
Governor, if you will, at a moment when the death penalty is being set back again in New York, the Supreme Court not only supports the death penalty, but has now said that it's okay to execute the mentally retarded killer as well as killers as young as 16. What's your response?
Ralph, I have not read the opinions. And, I'm not the lawyer to reserve the right to read the opinions before I give you any in-depth reaction. But I know enough about the death penalty and the Supreme Court and what they've done here to regret what they've said very much. It seems to me that what this bespeaks, frankly, is a great lack of strength. This is an extremely weak response by our society to say that our best answer to violence is to increase the violence. It sounds tough, but it is not strong. It is a confession that you can't think of an intelligent, strong way to keep order in this society. And so you are reduced now to the most primitive forms of conduct. It is a sign of weakness. It is a distressing sign of weakness to say, we can't do any better but than to let you kill mentally retarded people. Think of it. Mentally retarded people. People who, when they committed the act, might have been children. Think of your child, 6 or 7. Think of your mentally retarded child, who simply doesn't know any better. And they commit a crime. A terrible crime. And so you answer by strapping them into a chair or giving them a lethal injection and saying, the best our intelligence is capable of. After all these years of civilization, the best we can think to do is to destroy you. To take the one thing that we value most, life, and simply destroy it. Now, whatever else you say about the death penalty, and I know that, I repeat, there are people in this room much brighter than I and better than I am. I'll make that concession too, who disagree with me. I can only give you what I feel. And I'm telling you, I regard this as a terrible sign of weakness, not strength. It may sound tough to say we're going to kill you back. That is weakness. That takes you back to South Africa, the Soviet Union, Iran. We've made progress since then. That's why we gave up the death penalty. I'm very saddened by it. I think it's a very, very sad sign. I think it implies another thing. We have become very strong at symbols in this country. Maybe it has something to do with a new form of communication that says everything in 9 seconds, or 10 seconds, or 12 seconds. Everything's a head note, everything's a headline, everything's a neon sign. We're losing subtlety. The electric chair has become a symbol of our anger, our frustration, our confusion. We're offering people death as a cure for confusion. And that's another sign of our weakness. I think it's a sign of weakness.
You're angry with the legislature for presumably leaving on Friday without taking...
I'm not angry, Ralph. That's another sign of weakness. No, I'm not upset. No. I'm very calm. Watch, I'll calm. He gets angry. I've seen him get angry.
Are you contemplating any action that you can take as governor, a special session, for example?
Oh, you don't need special sessions if people agree to come back. I cannot, I am told, and I'll check this as soon as I get to Albany, and you can check it independently, I am told that the police of the city of New York, through their PBA, have been told by at least one of the major leaders that he promises to put the override of the death penalty on the floor by September. Now, September is only a couple of months from now. Maybe what they have in mind is coming back into, if they're going to come back for the death penalty, they'll have to come back for everything. But it would be a mistake to leave on June 30th and not do this. And this can be done. These bills have been worked on. John Peclember's been talking to them. It's not as though they put them on a shelf and don't know what's in them and haven't discussed them. These bills can all be done. Life in prison without parole can be done in 20 minutes when I get up there. All they have to do is to say, we wanted Governor, but Governor, let's get this clear. We think you're dead wrong on the death penalty. No pun intended, no ugly irony intended. We want the death penalty. We can't wait for the override. We're going to beat your brains out. We're going to run against you if you run next year on. That's all fine. But in the meantime, we'll do life in prison. That's what the mayor is saying. That's what everybody else is saying. They could do that tomorrow. Who objects to it? I mean, think of it. Who has a legitimate argument against it? If you're saying you need something tough, if you're saying you don't like that the governor let McGivern out with a clemency, then why don't you pass a law that says the next cop killer, and it should never happen. But if it ever happens, the next one goes away forever. And if you want to sound really tough, don't call it life without parole. Call it death by incarceration. You want to sound good and macho? All right, good. Death by incarceration. They go in, they don't come out until they die. That's what it is. Now, Ben Ward is right. It's probably tougher than the death penalty. I can tell you from personal experiences, people who pleaded for the electric chair instead of doing 25 years, let alone true life in prison without parole.
Governor, do you believe in what the mayor had to say in that death penalty and life without parole coexist?
Well, the mayor and I have disagreed with this always respectfully. The mayor has always wanted the death penalty, as far as he and I have discussed the subject, And I have always been against the death penalty. So my position is, you know, if you offered me a compromise, well, Governor, if we gave you a little teeny death penalty and a great big life in prison without parole to go with it, would you accept that? My answer is no, for all the reasons I've given. Is it possible from the death penalty proponent's point of view to do both? Of course it is. Of course it is. Michigan has it. Of course it is. You know, when you go to a jury, you could have both. You could say, what do you want, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? Do you want death penalty, or would you prefer life in prison without parole? And the jury could make the decision. They have that option anyway. If you don't give them life in prison without parole and you do give them the death penalty, it'll be the death penalty or 25 years, which is a lot less. You know, so sure they can have both. There is no legal, no logical contradiction here. Everything the death penalty proponents say is confirmed by their voting for life in prison without parole. And if they don't do it, then they're contradicting themselves. Let me add one thing that's very important. One of the leading proponents of the death penalty said 2 days ago, no, few days ago, and I spoke to him about it. Well, okay, we can't do the death penalty now, but wait until after the summer, because there's going to be carnage, not my word. There's going to be murders, and then the people will want the death penalty. They said that, not me. And what I said to him is, my God, if you really believe that, why don't you do life imprisonment without parole? If you can't get the death penalty, why don't you raise up every tough answer you can? How do you avoid doing it? No answer. And you go to the police, you say, look, they promised you, they were trying to protect you. Why don't you say to them, do life in prison without parole? And you know what they'll tell you? You'll have to get the answer for yourself, because they talk only anonymously. They'll say, well, you know, politically, the side that's been asking for the death penalty asked us to do this for them. Shouldn't there be an end to politics? You're talking about life, death, and war. This is no time for politics.
So do you think there's too much emphasis on law enforcement rather than prevention?
Not in my government. I just came from another rally where we showed a billboard. We're going to have 2,300 billboards, free. An outfit called Amni Advertising and giving 20, that is drug education, you know, designed to deal with drug education. I think you have to look at it this way. We politicians often make the mistake of polarizing, taking one position or the other, when the truth really is a combination. I think you have to go at this drug problem two ways. One is short term, immediately. There is an immediate threat. They are raping you now. You have to protect yourself now. So you need tough laws, police, and the whole system to back up police now. You can't put that off. You can't say, well, I will educate them not to take drugs, then they won't get crazy, then the dealers won't be, okay. So short term, must do law enforcement now to protect yourself against the present problem. Long term, to make the problem go away, if you have a chance to make it go away, good Lord willing, you do, the answer is on the demand side. As long as there is a demand for drugs, there will be a supply. As long as people want to take it, they'll find a way to produce it and to get it here. You will not be able to keep it out by law enforcement as long as there is a market for it. And the answer then, long term, is reduce the demand. Educate people not to want the drugs. If they don't want the drugs, then all the peddlers in the world will be unavailing because they won't buy it from them. Now, there is some evidence that that's working. Now, let me give you the evidence quickly. Michigan State University and my own experience on campuses all across the United States. In the last 4 years, the use of drugs on campuses has gone down for two reasons. Number one, people have been educated to the fact that this stuff will kill you. This is not play around stuff. This is not party time, like the spoon around the neck, you know, and out in the suburbs. Ooh, look at this, you know, there's my spoon. Let's have fun, and then Monday I'll try a case, or I'll be a doctor, or I'll be a salesman. You know, this isn't party time, baby. This kills you. This really does it to you. That's number one. Number two, private corporations have started testing. You want a job at IBM or one of these, I won't name the companies, but you can look them up. 60% of the big companies now, I'm told, are testing job applicants. That means if these students get on the stuff, get their degree, they won't get a job. So drug use is way down on the campuses, notwithstanding that the availability is way up. The price is down, the amount is available, more and more of it, cheaper and cheaper, they're using it less and less. So education does work, at least in that narrow context. Regrettably, that is the narrowest part of the problem. The real problem is in the streets. The real problem is in my old neighborhood in South Jamaica, where Ed Byrne was killed. That's my community. The real problem is down there with kids who are emptied out the streets, surrounded by pimps, prostitutes, drug dealers. I said, children growing up, becoming accustomed to the sound of gunfire before they've ever heard an orchestra. That's the real problem. And you have to get into them, and you have to get into family, and you have to get into school. That's the real answer long term. So short term, long term, we have to do both.
Governor, wouldn't this appeal have been more effective if it had been done longer than 2 days before the end of the legislative session?
4 days. I have done this. 2 months ago, I came to New York City, gave a big speech, my speech, action, crime, agenda, crime. I do it at every single leaders meeting, which is at least once a week. I start the meeting by saying, of course you want to go on June 30th, but you can't go without doing this. I talk about it every single day in Albany. Every single day, or anywhere else that I am. I happen to be in California last Thursday. I talked about it in California. I talk about it here. I talk about it every day. The speech I just gave you, I gave earlier on a street uptown.
What else can you do before the legislature is scheduled to
Go back for a meeting at 4 o'clock and tell them again. And hope that you write it down. Hope that Ralph talks about it. Hope that it's on. You know where the power is in this society. It's not Mayor Koch and it's not Governor Cuomo. It's not all the other people around us. The power is with the people. Hey, you don't have the assault weapon bill, right? They won't do machine guns. You know why? They wrote it in today's paper. They got a lot of letters. This is what they're saying. You know, not for attribution, but they quoted in the New York Times. We can't do it. I never got so much mail. Somebody wrote them a lot of letters saying, no, you should let everybody carry a machine gun. They said, okay, just don't vote against me, whatever you do, God forbid. They could have been written from New Jersey, these letters. And New Jersey might do it just to get even. Yeah. Not quite the same as the federal government. No. More than we now have, not quite what the federal powers are. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you have one more?
Yes, the mayor.
Mr. Mayor, as a proponent of capital punishment, how do you react to the Supreme Court's decision that you can execute kids at age 16 or those who may be only retarded?
I believe that no Western society, with the rarest of exceptions, has ever concluded that you should execute an adolescent, anyone under the age of 18. So I'm not in accord with that decision. I'm not in accord with the decision that you can execute a person who is mentally defective. Fact is, my own position is that we ought to change the law in the state of New York so we no longer have the plea not guilty because of insanity, but the plea should be, or the verdict should be, guilty but insane. Now what does that mean? In the first case, a case like Hinckley, as soon as 2 psychiatrists accepted by the court say that he is restored to sanity, he will be released even though he tried to assassinate the president. I believe that if you had the plea, which I mentioned as an alternative, which exists in other states in the Union, then someone who pleads and is able to establish at the time of the act he or she was insane, goes to a mental institution until they're restored to sanity and then goes to jail for the balance of the term. That's what I believe, but I do not believe that you execute mental defectives.
Is your plan to, is your push today for life without parole, does that not put you in odds with PBA?
I don't know that it does or it doesn't.
PBA has not stated it is against life in prison without parole. They have stated they are for the death penalty. They have not said they are against life in prison without parole. I know because I've spoken to their leadership. They will not push for life in prison without parole at this moment because the death penalty proponents, Vincent Graber and Dal Volker, have asked them not to, and announced that. They said, the PPA is with us. We will not do life in prison without parole now. They have given no reason for not doing it. They've simply said we will not do it. So the PPA is not saying we're against life in prison without parole. They're saying they're for the death penalty.
Well, you both stand there.
We're not, well, no, just want to answer that. We are not substantively in disagreement. We may be, and I don't know if it's the case either, procedurally. The proponents in Albany, some of the legislators, believe that you hold hostage the governor's bill and say we'll enact it after we get the death penalty. I don't believe in that. I believe that there are many people who, if we had the death penalty, should not receive the death penalty, but should go to jail for the balance of their lives. So there is no dichotomy here, and I don't believe to use procedure when you're in a court on substance.
Excuse me, there's another factor here that I think we should note. It gets very complicated. For 7 years, the proponents of the death penalty in Albany were fond of saying they had the polls on their side. And they probably did. I said for 7 years, I don't think you ought to decide this thing by polls. But for 7 years, they had the polls on their side. And I disavowed the polls. I continue to. However...
So do I.
However, the polls now show, as you probably know, the Amnesty poll, recent poll published by Westchester Gannett over the weekend, that if you gave the people of this state the choice between true life imprisonment without parole and death, they would select true life imprisonment without parole. Incidentally, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I said, put both propositions on the ballot, let the people of this state select it as a constitutional proposition, and I'm betting my career they vote 55-45 for life imprisonment without parole. That was 6 years ago. I used those numbers. The poll was 62-38 and 51-something yesterday. So, you see, now I do not rely on the polls, incidentally. It'd be worse than hypocritical for me to take the polls when they're with us after rejecting them when they're not. So I disavow them altogether. But it does confuse some proponents up there who have been battering us with polls for 7 years, now to be faced by the fact that they're the ones who are saying no to the people as they interpret the people.
Mr. Mayor, in accepting the governor's proposal for life, Governor, if you'll I'm going to sit for a while, right? In accepting the governor's proposal for life without parole, are you in effect saying that he's won this battle and the death penalty is over?
Oh, I can even answer that one. I believe that if you were to bet, you remember that I said EK and the exacta and the 2 horses came in on Saturday? So I'm good at this. If you were to bet as to whether or not the veto would be overridden, my belief is that based on all that we currently know, that it will not be overridden. It could be, but I don't think it will be. And I'm for its being overridden. But that has nothing to do with life imprisonment without parole. It stands on its own. And anyone who prevents it from occurring is, in my judgment, hurting the cause of justice for all of the reasons which I won't reiterate given on this dais.
So are you telling those people who you would like to see support life without parole that the death penalty issue is still on the table?
I'm saying, listen, you got 2 shots at this. First shot is something that the governor supports and that the vast majority of the people support as one option available to judge and jury. They're not inconsistent. Put it on the books. At the same time, pursue your opportunities to override the veto. I'm for pursuing those opportunities.
The battle's not over.
No, the battle's not over. Of course not. Okay, now I go.
Thank you.
Good. Okay.